Okay, welcome to another edition of the Trustcast Show, and I'm really excited to have with me a special guest, Dunham Biles. And Dunham Biles went from helping strike down an unconstitutional immigration ordinance all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court in defending Salt N Pepa in a trademark battle with DJ Spinderella. And that's just the tip of the case list. Today he runs Biles Wilson, which is a boutique litigation firm in Texas that punches well above its weight, and he just joined the board of a publicly traded energy tech company. So first question, you've argued cases involving major airlines, infrared camera trade secrets, lithium battery technology, and a legendary hip hop group. What's the common thread that ties your career together? That's quite an assortment.
Yes, and it's what our firm is based on and what we do best, which is we represent clients on the matters that matter most to them. That's what ties all of those cases together. The particular area of law, whether it's in the case of the Raytheon versus FLIR matter, that's patents and trade secrets at issue, or whether it's an environmental case, an antitrust case, whatever, that's not the issue. The issue in our skill set is that of problem solving, and the harder the problem, the better it is that you retain us, because that is what we do. We find solutions to problems that other people give up on, other people find too hard, other people aren't willing to put in the effort, and that's what puts them all together.
So, Penn undergrad, Chicago law. What was the moment that you knew law or litigation was your lane?
So the truth of that, this is a funny story and you have no idea. So in third grade, myself and two friends, and I took the laboring oar on this, wrote a letter to President Reagan. And at the time, we were studying the planets. And I wanted to know when we were going to send a man to Mars. So we wrote a letter to President Reagan. We received a letter back from NASA with Reagan's signature on it. Now, I'm smart enough now to realize it was an auto pen, but not in third grade. I thought it was great. And at that point, I decided I wanted to be president of the United States. And in fourth grade, I realized that most politicians are lawyers. And in fourth grade, I literally planned on being a lawyer. And I'm the type of person who always wanted to be a litigator. And I decided I needed to go to a great undergrad so that I could go to a great law school so I could achieve my goal. So that's what I've done. And I started it way back then.
Wow. That's a great story.
It's pretty incredible, because if you go down it further, I planned at that age to get married at 30 and have two kids. I got married at 31 and had two kids. So it's very close.
So you started at Quarles and Brady, and then you moved through Brewer, Lewis, Brisbois?
Yes.
Fox, Rothschild, and Steptoe and Johnson. That's a mouthful. What did you learn about boutique litigation? What did you learn at a boutique litigation firm that you couldn't learn at a big national firm?
I think what you learn is business, and you learn the importance of being able to pivot and being free of red tape and being more of an entrepreneur. Right? Big law firms are no different than big business. The bigger you get, the more employees you have, the more people you have working for you, the more red tape you have to have, because there's no way to manage that many people and that many things without having absolute rules, which is not my strong suit. I'm more entrepreneurial than that. I like to solve problems, and those things get in the way. So that's certainly one of the things that was very important to me starting my own firm. But also, there's a lot of things. My time at Bickle & Brewer, which was I spent 10 years there and was a partner. It's a boutique litigation firm for sure, doing very large cases, and learned the ability to how to staff cases without putting 40 lawyers on a case. How you get it, how you can still get it done, and how you can do it at a world-class level. And so those are a few of the things I learned for sure.
So now that you have your firm that you're in, and you've had a lot of success, and we're going to go through some more interesting conversations here. But how do you stay at a certain size? So, um, every lawyer I've ever met wants to grow their firm, but how do you do that without becoming a big firm where you have the same pressures that a big law firm has, and then you become very bureaucratic?
Sure. And we're committed to not growing to the point where that happens. Yes, do we want to grow? For sure. But my bigger concern with growing is the loss of culture, because my partner and I have been friends for 25 years now. We worked together at multiple of those firms that you listed out. He and I were both there. And so we come from the same background, have the same philosophy, and the firm has the same view about how we do things. And as you get bigger, this becomes more difficult. And so the answer to your question is that we're going to stick in our lane. Our lane is litigation. That's what we do. Litigation, trial work. We're not going to start doing wills and trusts, and we're not doing mergers and acquisitions. That's not what we do. And that will in itself presumably put some limit on it, but not necessarily. And then I think we're cautious about growth. We've grown a lot. We started with 2 people. We're at 7 today, and we're in 2026. We will add another physical office and at least one more lawyer. So we will continue to grow, but I think our cap is. I don't think we're ever getting above 20 lawyers, but you never know, because that's the thing, is that both my partner and I love to learn. And that's one of the reasons why we're lawyers. That's why we're litigators, because every day, as you list off those cases on the surface of them don't have anything in common. We're talking about infrared cryogenically cooled cameras in a military Joint Strike Fighter jet to R&B music. Those things are, right? But that means I have to learn them over and over, day after day. I have to learn a new topic, a new client, a new subject. So we'll continue to look at opportunities and be open to them, but we don't have some goal of growth for the sake of growth. They'll have to fit the client. The cases will demand more lawyers over time, and we'll add more lawyers.
So something just occurs to me. I mean, I have this list of questions, and I always end up getting through maybe half of them at most, because it's interactive. So something occurs to me, the conversation, since you have these different kinds of cases, and we do have other lawyers who, tune into this podcast. What's the conversation you have with, so let's say you have this high-tech kind of case, and then you get approached by Salt N Pepa, and what's the conversation that you have with them so that they feel confident in your ability to switch lanes like that?
Sure. I think it first starts off with, it's one of the things I learned at one of the firms along the way in my career, was that I do my homework. Before I have that meeting, I dig in as much as I can to understand the client, their business, their needs, without having to ask them. And when we work on cases, we do our best to not have to bother the client to ask them, because all you're doing is, 1, showing your ignorance, 2, not reflecting how much you care about them, and 3, wasting everybody's time. If I can figure it out, you're talking about very sophisticated individuals, entrepreneurs, companies. They want somebody they can trust, that they can turn it over to, and you'll make their problem go away for them. They need to run their businesses, not deal with litigation. And that's what I talk to them about. I talk to them about what I've done, how I'm going to help them. I come in with hopefully with some plan, and I make it clear to them that, as our website says, the clients come first. And I mean that quite literally. I sat in the hospital when my mother was in the hospital, and I took care of what needed to be done. I've come back from funerals early to take care of clients. I owe them a fiduciary duty. I'm asking them to trust in me, the biggest, most important matter they have. If they're going to do that, they need to know that I'm going to take care of them. and it has to come first. And that's a sacrifice that's one of the issues about being a litigator. If you're going to do those kind of cases, you got to be willing to pivot and do what you need to do to take care of it.
Okay. So the case, so your farmers branch immigration case went from district court to the Fifth Circuit to the U.S. Supreme Court. Walk us through what the 7-year fight was actually like day to day.
So because it was a constitutional fight, there was a limited amount of what we call discovery. So depositions, document requests, the normal things that happen in normal litigation, because this is a challenge to the constitutionality of it. And it's really about the law, not so much about the facts. And so there's portions of time there where we're waiting on court decisions and there isn't an active matter going on. But that said, it's actually a 7-year fight because it starts with so long ago. Started with the first ordinance. They took a shot at this the first time. We sued in federal court and in state court to put an end to that one. During that lawsuit, they amended the ordinance, passed a new ordinance attempting to fix some of the problems. That failed, and Judge Lindsay in the Northern District of Texas struck it down as unconstitutional. In the meantime, we had 2 state court actions going on for those 2 ordinances involving the Texas Open Meetings Act and violations in adopting those ordinances because, as we had alleged, they had negotiated the whole thing behind closed doors and just come out with an ordinance without having a public debate and so forth in violation of state law. So those get struck down. They then pass a 3rd ordinance, and it was set to go into effect the day after Labor Day. So it was a long Labor Day weekend where we drafted the lawsuit and the request for a temporary restraining order to immediately put a stop to it. And so it was for a week or so, it was a lot of work. And then we received, the court granted the TRO. And shortly thereafter, there was a preliminary injunction hearing, and the preliminary injunction was sustained. And then we proceeded with some amount of discovery. There was some discovery, so we took some depositions, including of the USCIS, I think, immigration official, and filed for an very early summary judgment. We prevailed. Then the appeal began. We went to the Fifth Circuit, as you said. We won in a 2-1 opinion, as I recall. And then they asked for en banc, and I argued it on appeal. And then we went to en banc, which means we had 15 judges from the Fifth Circuit, as I recall, which is an interesting and wonderful experience. I stood at the top of the U to argue that. The judges were seated in the U, and I did not get to say much of my my thought out speech that argument I was going to give. It was a peppering of questions coming from all angles. I'd be looking to the right while receiving a question from the left, turn to answer it, and now I had no idea who'd even ask the question. It was a great experience, and we won there. They then asked to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we fought the certification, and the Supreme Court denied cert, so that ended the case.
So can you tell me, or what was the matter that was before the court? I should have asked that in the beginning. I mean, I did my research, but just so that everybody could know what we're talking about. Sure.
The City of Farmers Branch at the time had a leadership that wanted to. They said they wanted to prevent illegal aliens from renting apartments or purchasing homes within the City of Farmers Branch. And thus, we represented an individual and 3 apartment complexes. Our 3 apartment complexes primarily were corporate apartment complexes, so companies who were opening offices, moving headquarters, etc., into the Dallas area. They would put employees up in those apartments for 30 days, 60 days, transitioning them so they could find their own housing. Well, it caused a huge problem for them because given the requirements that the city had tried to include in there was no way that we were going to be able to comply because our apartment complexes, because we didn't know who was coming until they came. And there was a whole process to go through to try to prove they were U.S. citizens, etc. And so eventually the courts struck it down, because what that really is it's preempted by the United States Constitution. That's an attempt by the City of Farmers Branch to regulate who can come into this country, who can stay in this country, and who cannot. And it's not up to the City of Farmers Branch to prevent housing to these people. That is the federal government's job, and we have all sorts of political views about that. I have very strong political views myself about this, but
it's not about that, is it?
It's not. It's the law. It's the Constitution, and it's the president who gets to do. The federal government decides who's good, and we clearly have the last two presidents, one who let everybody in and one who's trying to deport. Two different options. That's why we vote. That's why we have politics. But at the federal level, that's not for the city to do. Imagine every city trying to decide who can be here and who cannot. It's insane.
So that case also led to a Voting Rights Act victory that created the first Latino majority council district in Farmers Branch. Did you set out to reshape city politics, or did that just organically happen?
That organically happened, and the reason for it is obvious in the sense that we took on the City of Farmers Branch in various cases. And in those cases, we became acquainted with, knew well, various Hispanic members, leaders in the City of Farmers Branch. And given what we'd done, they came to us and asked for assistance with that case. And that was a big deal in the City of Farmers Branch. That was a community that it wasn't going to happen, and a Hispanic was not likely to have prevailed in the City of Farmers Branch. And it's interesting because things have really changed in that town. And it was an old guard, and they're no longer there, and others have come to power.
So, what made you leave the national firm to start your own shop with Jeremy Wilson?
Yeah, one of the big problems of being at a large law firm is what we call conflicts, meaning that the firm had a reason why I couldn't represent the client I wanted to represent. And it had happened to me at Fox Rothschild, where I lost an opportunity I would have made probably double what I was making had I been able to bring in some clients, but I had other partners, because you had 1,000 lawyers at Fox Rothschild that represented repeatedly clients who were adverse to my potential new clients. And so that gets frustrating. And except I ran into a problem. I had an opportunity to represent somebody who had done her research, determined that I was exactly the correct person to do the case for her, called me, asked me to do the case. It was a case I wanted to do for lots of reasons, and I couldn't do it at that firm. And for a while, I let that go, and eventually I decided, no, I it's time. I have the clients, I have the ability. I'm an entrepreneur, always have been in spirit. I've missed my opportunity, and I looked at myself. I'd lost a billionaire client at Fox Rothschild because I couldn't take them. And then I had this one, and I'm like, how many times in my life am I going to get called by people who want me to do this kind of case? And I'm at that time 48 years old or something. It's time. It's now or never. It's time to get it done. And so Jeremy was a friend, and we went to dinner one night. And just because we went to dinner, I asked him if he knew any associates looking for work, attorneys, because I was going to start a firm. I needed some help. He goes, well, do you need a partner? I go, well, I'm open to that. And so we finished dinner, went back to my house, opened a bottle of wine, had a conversation, and the next day wrote a partnership agreement. So.
And how long ago was that?
Well, we opened the firm on August 1, 2023. So it'll be 3 years this August.
Oh, it's still a really exciting time for you. So your tagline is where clients and winning come first. how does a 2 to 5 attorney, well now 7, firm compete against teams of 50 on the other side?
You have to be devoted to your craft and your practice and your clients. And just to give you an example, one of my prior firms was 40 lawyers max at one point, probably, sometimes down to 20. And we went against the largest firms in the world. And some of those would put 40 lawyers on our case. We'd have 2, 3. You don't have to have 40 lawyers. It's almost never necessary. But what you have to be willing to do is put in the time, right? I've interviewed lawyers before when I was hiring at bigger firms, and they graduated from the top law schools. And I looked at them and said, great, that's a prerequisite to success, but it's not sufficient, because you got to assume my other side's going to be just as intelligent as we are. They went to the greatest law schools in the world. So how are we going to beat them? There's only one way to beat them. You have to outwork them. And more people isn't outworking them. That's just throwing more people on, billing the clients more and more. We fortunately are gifted and extremely hardworking. And the answer is we look at cases and create what everybody calls bespoke strategy. But you got to find the right strategy for that case and execute it. And we can do it with 2 people. And if we need more people, we have access to more people. I have friends who I grew up with at the same law firms who also have their own firms. I know lots of lawyers. If this comes down to we need 20 lawyers to go do document review, then we can find the 20 lawyers to do the doc review. Also, AI makes things more efficient. And so if used properly, you can do things that way too. But the truth is that Jeremy and I simply are pretty quick on our feet and quickly recognize patterns, problems, issues, and come up with the solutions and simply execute on it. And if it takes us working around the clock, we'll do it.
We're not going to get to half of my questions, but let me do some rapid fire, right? Because I always have fun with these.
Cool.
Courtroom or arbitration tribunal?
Courtroom.
Most underrated skill for a trial lawyer?
Writing. That's not just to clear. Writing is what I always say. It's the most important skill. It's what we do for a living. People want to talk about trial lawyers, and we stand up on our feet and we do all this. 99% of all cases, or 97, don't go to trial. Cases are won or lost on writing all day, every day.
That's interesting. Best advice you ever got from a mentor?
To quit doing work only for her and to go work for other litigators, because I needed to be, in order to be successful, I had to learn who I was. And I needed to, in order to do that, I needed to observe others and put their skills, her skills together in a way that fit my own personality. Because if you're not yourself, you're faking it and you'll never make it.
Favorite thing about living in Rockwall, Texas?
Oh, well, the view of the lake. What you don't know is I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and grew up raising cattle, horses, sheep. We were an hour from skiing, an hour from the mountains. So being in Texas is not geographic or is not ideal because it's flat and we're a long ways from mountains and oceans. But I do have a view of the lake out here, and that's comforting.
So I am actually in the Pacific Northwest. I'm in the Bellevue, Washington.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Sherwood, Oregon, about 20 miles south of Portland. I lived in Gig Harbor, Washington. I lived in Tacoma, Washington, and I worked in Auburn and Puyallup, Tacoma, and Seattle.
Yeah.
So
those are all places I know.
Yeah.
So one case from history you wish you could have argued?
Oh, boy. I don't know the answer to that one. I've never thought about what case
we can skip over that, but you can think about it for fun anyway.
Yeah.
What's on your desk right now besides case files?
On my desk, papers, pens. As I said, I used to tell my kids, they asked me what I did for a living. I said I'm a professional reader and a professional writer. So I have all the implements here because I have a brief to write later today. So I have case law in front of me too.
So you're a regular legal analyst on Houston's morning news, Fox News Radio, and other outlets. How did that start?
So I host my own podcast with my partner, and we use a guy named Jeff Crilly here in Dallas. Who Jeff is a former Fox News investigative reporter who then started out doing PR and so forth. He now has podcasts, studios that he rents out, etc. And he also does PR for lawyers. And every day he sends out I don't know how often, a little thing to reporters about what's going on in the world and so forth. And they call him about if he has a lawyer that can speak. And so some of those are that. And then I was on those shows, and so then they just call me directly when they have something they want to talk about.
So do you enjoy doing that? I
love
imagine
it.
you do.
It's actually it's a lot. It's a lot of fun, and it's interesting because you never know. I think if you go on there, you'll see one out of Baltimore where it's about the bridge collapsing after it got hit by the ship, right? And that was one way to do it. But then I got interviewed in North Dakota on the same issue, and that person interviewing me must have been a lawyer. He got deep into legal issues, and so sometimes it's a political. There's political reasons why they're just using you to get some things to make some political point. Sometimes it's a little bit fluff. Sometimes it's a real lawyer interview, and they're getting deep into the law. So you never know what's going to happen when you get on those shows.
So let's see. So you've broken down everything from the Trump trial to Daniel Perry verdict. We could go on and on about all these, to the Hunter Biden pardon. What's the hardest part about explaining complex legal issues in a 3-minute TV bit?
Well, sometimes the hardest part is the interviewer has somewhere that they're trying to go with it, and you're not getting in what you wanted to get in, and you gotta adjust to, and you gotta remember, look, these people, if you want to be back on, they're trying to entertain people most of the time. And so you have to come prepared. You have to think through some sound bites that you can give that are honest, but yet make the point. And they only have 30 seconds or a minute or two. So you have to boil it all the way down to the most basics.
You and Jeremy also host the Best podcast, which we just featuring business leaders. What made two litigators want to start interviewing entrepreneurs?
Well, the simple truth is that Jeff Crilly invited me on his podcast and then showed me around, and I liked the idea. I thought it would be good for us, and then so we started doing it. But it's also true that Jeremy and I, when we're not working, or even when we're working, we take a break from it. We sit around and talk about all sorts of issues, and we enjoy it, and we enjoy talking to our friends about it. And so it was a way to do that. Now, we try to avoid all those conversations because some of those somebody might not agree with us or like. But so it's an opportunity for us to bring on our own. Some of those are our own clients. We give them a platform to talk about their companies, their successes. Sometimes it's our own friends. Sometimes it could be a competitor. We just enjoy having the conversation with our friends and learning about them and letting other people learn about who they are, what they do, and hopefully it helps them out along the way.
Do you get? I would think you'd get some leads that people would find you from the podcast and say, "Hey, those guys are great. I want to. I have an issue." Does that probably happens too?
Yeah. So I that would be great if it does. I don't know that it does, but that is part of why we do it. Obviously, we put it out not so much to directly generate leads. But one of the issues is somebody who's been successful at bringing in clients is I can set up the meetings all day, but I'm selling litigation. And hopefully my potential clients, these businesses, don't have litigation every day. So I go meet with them. I'm probably not walking out with a case. If I was a real estate lawyer, they might well have a file to hand over to me. So the question is then, how do you stay on top of their mind? And one way to do that is have content. And so it gives us another content to put out in LinkedIn, Yahoo, that they'll see, and it's just reminding them that we exist, because they may love me, but the problem is there's 20 other lawyers doing the same thing. It may well be the last one who was there that they loved, that they remember on the day when it all hits the fan.
So let's before we run out of time, I want to talk about Greenway Technologies because you're important to appointing to the board there. What drew you to that opportunity? How did that all come together?
Yeah, so that's interesting. It's a client of mine who Jeremy and I managed to save. They were in a bind. They called me 24 hours or 48 hours before a summary judgment hearing was going to happen, and they hadn't even filed a response. And so we filed an emergency motion, got that moved, got the summary judgment denied, and then got the plaintiff to dismiss the case altogether as a multi-million-dollar problem that we managed to make disappear for them. And so we've stayed close to them. We represent them on other matters, and they were looking to add 2 new board members. And so they set up an interview with me and the chairman and another board member, and we had a great conversation and enjoyed the opportunity. And they asked me if I'd be willing to join and help lead the company going forward. And I'm honored to have that opportunity. And so that is where we are today.
Okay, that's an interesting story. So how does sitting on a board change the way you think about advising your litigation clients, or does it?
It hasn't yet. I would like to think that I've always been a little different than most lawyers, in that a problem with us as lawyers is that we are trained to be risk averse. That is by definition what we do. We look at issues and tell clients what can go wrong or what will go wrong or how bad it is. And so that mindset sticks with you. And when you're on the board, you can't be that way. You can't be risk averse. You need to be, this is a good thing about going to the University of Chicago and doing law and econ. While some law and econ is I understand the business aspects of this. And I hope that I do regularly bring to my clients, not the risk averse version of lawyers, but the one that can analyze it and lay out what the risks are, but also advise them about the business opportunity that may lie therein, and let them make the decision about how much risk they want to take on, or how little risk they want, and then make the decisions that way.
That's an interesting perspective, because I did talk to somebody. Well, it's been a little while ago, but he talked about, no, I don't want to ask my lawyer that, because his answer is always going to be no.
That's right. And I try never to actually give that answer, right? Because yes, I may look at this and go, there's a huge downside. But we can do the calculation. Let's say I put it at a 50% chance or 60% chance you're going to get sued. Okay, what's the odds that you lose? Okay, if you lose, how much money are you going to lose? Okay, now we know the downside. Now we need to know the upside. And the business needs to decide, okay, but if we do this thing, we will make this much money and we'll have this percentage, and let's figure out what the likely outcome is, and then make a decision about how much risk you're going to take. You can't just be the no man. That's why even in-house counsels are often despised by their business people, right? Because they're the ones screwing up the deal. And this is why, just so we're clear, this is why I have a job. Because you would think sophisticated companies would write perfect contracts. They don't. And the reason why they don't is because it's a negotiation. And the two businesses who are negotiating want the deal. The lawyers want to write all this perfect language, but the other side's not going to agree to language that perfectly protects one side. So you'll end up with some gobbledygook in the middle. And thus, there's a job for me to do, because it's not crystal clear what the outcome should be, because they can't write it that way. You'll never get a deal done. Arguably, that's why legislation is the way it is, right? Because you can't get it passed.
It's always a compromise that's not good for. Anyway, but that's a whole nother story. So for business owners watching this who've never thought about board composition, why does it matter who's sitting in those seats?
Well, it matters because those people are helping decide your future, right? They're setting the board is presumably setting the direction, and the officers, the executives are executing thereon. But if you don't have the right vision, you're not going to be successful, and you need the people who have the ability to make decisions. And sometimes you're not going to have perfect information, and you're going to have to be willing and able to make a decision based on what you're going to predict and rely on, and you have to be able to lead. there are boards that have people who like to talk and talk and talk and never do, and then you don't get anything done. And if you have the people in there that are look, you can't have too many risk. You don't want risk preferring, and you can't have too many people who are look at the glass and say it's half full. You have to be realistic too. So you need some vision. You need some balance on that board, so that you have a true, and you have to have people who trust and believe in each other on that board, so that you can have a true airing of issues and come to the best decisions.
So you and Jeremy knowing each other for 25 years. That's quite a long time together. So do you guys fight like brothers sometimes over things?
We will, in my office, the office most enjoys it when Jeremy and I have disagreements, but they're always done in fun and jest and in good spirits, and we rarely disagree. And to the extent when we do disagree, it's on the margins of things that aren't very important. And thus, either one of us could really go with what the other one said, because it's not going to matter. And that's why when I did this, I knew Jeremy was the right person, because I've worked with him. We've been friends. We grew up together in the same law firm. And, what we do is not that different than there's a difference, but definitely. But in many ways, it's done the same way, with the same care to perfectionism. We try to do it as perfectly as you can do it, which means when I say writing's important, I mean it. And I will rewrite my own writings over and over and over again, because it's one thing I learned in school, right? You can always get better. You can always write better. No matter how well I've written it, it can still be written better. And our clients need it to be written as well as it can be. That's why they're paying me. They're paying me to get the results. They don't want to see something that they look at and go, well, I'm not paying this guy. And so he and I agree on all these things.
So you've been named a Texas super lawyer 5 years running. Did I get that right?
I think that is correct.
And then,
although I think I just got named. I know I did in 2026 as well. So,
and D Magazine's best lawyers in Dallas. At this point in your career, what are you still trying to prove?
It's, to me, I have to prove myself to myself over and over and over again. And this is one of the things that Jeremy and I always we laugh about. In my business, success only lasts for a moment. When I win a case, that's great for that night. But the next day I got another case I got to win. And that's the joy of it. I'm just built that way. I'm not one sitting back. It doesn't matter to me what I did last year or yesterday. I like to win, and I like to accomplish and succeed. So every day is a new adventure for me, where I'm trying to be the best. I'm not trying to prove that to anybody. It's just who I am at my core, and I'm proving it to myself over and over again.
So you mentioned something about your kids. So how does you obviously exact a high price of yourself to make sure your clients are represented in the way you feel like they should be represented? How do you balance that out, with the family in that?
Well, simple truth is I didn't do it very well. But my kids are now 30 and 29 years old. And the 29 years old is up there on Whidbey Island. He's in the Navy. And they're awesome kids, and I'm very fortunate to have such great kids. But look, I'm sure they would tell you that I wasn't, because the truth is I wasn't there on a lot of things that normally you would want to be there. I wanted to be there, but I couldn't be. So there's a cost to it. But the way in which I went about it is, when I was there, then I was just the same as when I'm at work, and I'm fully committed to work. When I was at home and I was with them, then you have to be equally committed to that period of time and doing it. And I had to be, if we want to take a vacation or something, it wasn't that we could pre-plan it. I just had to come home one day and go, listen, I don't have that much on my schedule for the next 3 days. Let's go now. And you got to pay extra because you're buying tickets last minute, whatever. You just have to be able and willing to do that. But I always remember Charles Barkley one time talking about this. Like, if you want to be the greatest basketball player in the world, don't tell me you want to be the greatest husband in the world too. Like, you can't be great at every. It comes at a cost, and you have to set up your life accordingly.
So I will say I had a really demanding career. I, I still ask a lot of myself doing this, but I'm sympathetic with that. My usual hours were 60 hours was a very short week for me while I was working. And so, but on the flip side, I had 4 kids, and I think my kids they're like driven. They're all driven. So I don't know. There's the other side of that.
Yeah, no, there is. It depends how you value it, and my kids are great, and I have a significant role in how they are, who they are, what they are, and they're very happy, and we have a great relationship. But just I miss things that I didn't want to have to miss. I couldn't be at every school event. It couldn't happen. But to the extent I was able to, and if that meant, it meant that I might have to leave work at whatever time and then go right back. And I might have to work all night, but you make the time and you devote yourself completely to that time when you have that time.
So we've run out of time. I have more questions, but we just don't have any more time. So hang with me just for a second longer.
Yeah.